Welcome to Technado.
Welcome back to another episode of Technado. As always, I'm your host, Sophie Goodwin. Looking forward to jumping into some more tech news this week and maybe even getting a new assignment for the next 80s action movie that I have to watch. Last week it was Predator, and I just haven't had a chance to watch another one since then. So I'm sure I'll get a new assignment today, which I'm looking forward to. Would you what? You've watched four. That's just a normal Tuesday night for you,
right,
though.
well,
I mean, that's
what's your keep? Like, what holds you up?
that's standard. Lack of desire really is what it is. Once I start watching the movie, I get into
You
it.
think Sophia will enjoy her new job?
just watching 80s action films, or
After this, I'll go watch a new one. Now that we've had this conversation, and I'm joined, of course, as always, by Don Pizzette. Don, how are you?
I am doing great. You know, it was a weird week for technology. Tons and tons of breaches. If we wanted to change this to Breachnado, we would have a hard time limiting the articles. So it's a wild world out there. But we do have other unrelated non-security tech news to tackle. So looking forward to it.
And if Daniel has anything to say that doesn't have to do with my lack of 80s action movie knowledge, go ahead and say it now.
You know, I'm not angry so much as I am disappointed.
Oh, boy.
That's what it boils down to.
Wow. Spoken like a true dad.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that word of encouragement before we start this episode. It's given me the confidence boost I need. Let's go ahead and jump into our articles today because we've got some interesting stuff we're going to cover. This first one comes to us from Tom's Hardware. This is about some stuff going on with Microsoft. It says Windows 11 will make the print screen key open snipping tool. And this is something that actually I started reading it and I was like, I forgot the snipping tool existed. I used to use it all the time in school I was homeschooled, and I would use OneNote to take notes, and I would want to pull screen grabs of the diagrams from textbooks, online textbooks, and it was so much easier to just grab the little snippet that I need rather than take a screenshot of the whole page. So I'm kind of for this change, that it doesn't just take a screenshot of the whole screen and it opens that snipping tool instead.
Yeah, to properly understand this, we kind of have to go back in time, right? The U.S. keyboard, and actually, I mean, most international keyboards too, are littered with buttons that are no longer relevant, right? You know, like the escape key. We use the escape key for a ton of things, but back in the day, that was how you let the program know that you were getting out of talking to the program and more so talking to the system itself. Print screen would literally take the text that was on your screen. This was before GUIs, right? So just the text and print that out. Scroll lock would stop text from scrolling by on your screen pre-GUI. So most of these buttons had a non-graphical purpose. And when we switched to graphical user interfaces, these buttons became obsolete. When would you ever print your screen when it's a full-on graphic? Like, you're just going to burn through.
I was under the impression that after we got into the Windows being our kind of like, major force out there, is that the print screen button actually took a screenshot of the entire screen, right?
Yeah.
So they made that change.
Yeah.
I think it was in Windows 95 when they made that change,
Yeah, and then
not
you just
in
like
3.1.
open that in Paint or whatever and do your annotation
Yeah.
or your cutting and cropping and.
Why would you print?
Right.
Because it's just going to burn up ink and it's a waste, but save it to a graphic file, and that makes sense, right?
Yep.
Well, fast forward 30 yeand the print screen button still takes a screenshot. Well, about 3 years ago, Microsoft released the snipping tool, actually a little bit longer.
It was a while back, yeah.
And they made it an option where you could go in and turn this new snipping tool on. And the new
It's like a
snipping
Windows
tool,
Vista thing. Did it come out with Vista?
maybe.
I think it did.
No, it can't be that
I think
old,
it
right?
did, yeah.
Yeah?
I want to say.
Well, we'll have to dig on the history on that one. If it is, it's even more
November
embarrassing.
7th, 2002.
2002.
Booyah.
Holy
That's
crap.
XP,
Yeah.
bro.
It was named Screen Sketch.
That's forever ago.
Yeah.
So the point here, though, is that the snipping tool is incredibly useful compared to just a screenshot, right? With a screenshot, it grabs your whole screen. Well, if you have a 4K monitor, it's a pretty big image file that it generates, and things are pretty small in it. Well, with the snipping tool, you can grab a particular region. You can grab just an individual window. Like, there's all sorts of stuff you can do with this tool. Way more useful. And it's taken Microsoft forever. I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. I thought it was just a couple of years, but
Apparently 20.
I think, well, the snipping tool may have been around that long, but the option to make it what the print screen button does, that hasn't been around that long, has
That
it?
I have no idea.
I feel like that's just in the last few years, but Microsoft has finally reached the point where they're going to change the default functionality of a button on every keyboard, at least every keyboard in the United States. Now, to most of us, that's a relief. We're like, oh, thank goodness, now this key is going to be useful, because I have to always remember to turn that feature on. But if you support end users in any form in your job, get ready. Because when you change what a physical button on the keyboard does, you will be, I mean, just amazed at the crap end users come up with on this, and you'll need to know how to set it back to the old setting.
Yeah, they are really adept at finding ways to screw up even the most mundane, simplistic task. And like, I'm not trying to like disparage any end user. I'm saying it's just interesting the fact that like, what you go. I remember saying, what you're telling me on the phone right now should be an impossibility. Like they deleted their administrator account or something like right. And in a Windows world, that's supposed to be an impossibility, right? There's always an ace. And you're like, it's gone. It is not here. You have done. Are you some sort of warlock that has weird psychic powers?
That was God on the phone.
Yeah, right. Great at Jeopardy.
I've told you my end user nightmare story about desktop icons. Have I ever shared that?
I don't
one with
remember if you have or not.
I think everybody who's worked in IT sooner or later builds up what they consider like their dumbest user interaction ever, and I've got one. So I used to maintain a Windows remote desktop failover cluster. You know, it was. Did you ever work on those, the terminal servers?
I never had to work on the terminal servers.
Well, we had 4 or 6 of them in a cluster where users get connected. They get routed to one of these 6 servers, and that's where they'd get their desktop. And they had their icons and things. And it was all synchronized between the 6 nodes. Any node could fail, and a user would just end up on another node. It was very, very simple, but robust. And we were doing maintenance on one node, and the maintenance didn't go so well. So I said, all right, well, who cares? I'll just format it, and we'll restore it from backup because we backups everything. And it was a cluster anyways, so the data was actually stored somewhere else. So we restore it from a backup. And the next day, I get a call from a user. Well, the call went through the help desk, escalated up to me.
Oh, you mean they fielded the call and said, let me transfer you.
Yeah.
That was the help desk Don and I used to work
as
on.
that particular help desk would do.
Yeah.
Our most expensive call routing system.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. Salaries and pensions were involved.
So it made it up to me on the server team, and I remotely connected to this person's session because, you know, with a terminal server, you can see people's sessions. And he was saying, all the icons on my desktop are gone. And, you know, first off, people with icons on their desktop, like you never see your desktop. It's just not a way Windows is designed to be used. It's frustrating, but I'm okay with it. You know, that's what this guy does. But I said, okay, well, how many icons are we talking about? And he said, it's about 20. And I'm looking at his desktop and I see 20 icons. And he starts naming off icons and I see every one. And I told the guy, I said, all right, I'm going to need some help here because I see these icons. They're right here. You and I are seeing the same thing. I don't understand. And he goes, well, no. Those are the right icons. They're just not in the right place.
Oh, my goodness.
And he had like arranged the icons on his desktop in a certain order or whatever that he knew. And it turns out when you back up a Windows profile, it doesn't track icon location as a like immutable thing.
Yeah.
And so when we restored from backup, they were alphabetical.
Yeah.
And it broke this guy's mind. And he was irate. He went all the way up to one of the VPs on this thing
he did not.
Before they told him that he was being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was.
I wonder how, like, did he feel like the biggest fool on earth when the VP, you know, they were like, it's stupid icons, dude. Shut up and go to work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Bill told me that, you know, the mainframe controllers that, you know, we used to send out the updates for the mainframe controllers on floppies, like floppy floppies. And he said, somebody called and said, I can't get the floppy to go into the controller. And he said, I'm on the phone with them for like half an hour trying to figure out why this floppy disk will not go into the drive bay. And he said, I physically went and got a controller, pulled it into my office. I said, okay, I'm looking at it. You open the door. Straight ahead of you is the floppy controller. They're like, no. He goes, what do you mean no? He goes, no, it's to the left. He's like, left. He looks. On the door is a picture of the front of the controller with all the things labeled and what they were. He was trying to stick it into the picture. Kid you not. Kid you not. And then my biggest one was this lady called up, said she couldn't see the files on her flash drive. And I'm like, all right, let's get logged in. I'm like, no, I'm not seeing them. I'm like, this is really weird. It's almost like it's not connected. And she's like, "Oh, you have to plug it in?" I go, because it was all done remote work, right? I'm in my office. They're out in in a county office somewhere. And I'm like, well, most electronic devices require electricity to work. So go ahead and plug that on in, and there's your files. You have a great day now. I'm going to go, contemplate my life decisions.
You can never underestimate what end users will come up with, and I don't want to derail this whole episode.
It's
too
been
much,
fun,
but
though.
It has been fun.
A little memory lane.
Back when wireless, Wi-Fi was really starting to get popular, so we had 802.11a and b, which, if you're in commercial terms, basically came out at the same time. Intel ran a series of commercials about how their Celeron processors were designed to work with Wi-Fi technologies, right?
Okay.
It was marketing BS.
Yes.
It really didn't matter. But they had this commercial, and in the commercial, it showed a guy at the peak of a mountain, like Mount Everest or some crap like that. And he's sitting, he gets to the peak of the mountain, and he breaks out his laptop, and it shows him working. And they ended up they got sued over
Right, because there's no way that worked.
And what Intel was saying was, well, maybe somebody put an access point up at the top of the mountain, as they do.
Some Sherpa drug a stinking access point with all in a battery pack, and then connected it to what?
Yeah,
right. Like, you understand. Like, this is because people don't know about technology, especially when it's new, right? What people didn't understand is that yes, you have an access point that connects to something that is wired.
Yes.
There must be a wired connection.
Yeah.
But for years, we had people they'd go to Best Buy and buy a laptop, and it would have the Wi-Fi symbol on it, and they would just assume that they could get internet anywhere. And even though they didn't pay for an internet account anywhere, like, so the whole point of this, we go on way off tangent here. The whole point is, you change the functionality of a key on a keyboard. It seems really minor, but get ready for some calls.
Yeah. Help desk gonna light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, the world will burn. Yeah. Okay.
Sophia's like,
to know.
What's a floppy?
Okay. Like, you oversimplify my residual knowledge of
I don't
stuff.
feel like I do.
No, I think they were obsolete before you were born.
Yeah.
I'm vaguely aware of this stuff. It's like, have you ever heard of a cassette tape? And I'm like, yes. Do I use them? No, but I know what they are. I'm like, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. But you're right in that I don't have any up close and personal firsthand experience.
You actually held one in your hand, I'm sure.
No, but sir, it's my dream.
I know.
One day, for real and for true, I'd love to hold one in my hand.
Was it you that asked me if I had one the other day? Somebody asked me if I had a floppy disk, and I'm like, yeah, that's a big no.
Oh, I wouldn't have asked you that because I have
a
ton of floppy disks just right behind us on the shelf.
Somebody came up to me the other day and asked me if I had a floppy disk. I'm like,
it's
a hard no.
It would be easier for me to produce a floppy disk than it would be, say, a turnip truck, which is what you just mentioned, and has blown my mind. Who the hell talks about a turnip truck?
So that's an old Southern stating.
Yeah, it is. I forgot. You're from Seattle, aren't you? Washington. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a Southern. It's I wasn't
Southern
born yesterday.
Expression,
yeah.
Turnip truck.
Sorry, I'll translate. See, I'm not the only one that doesn't know things.
Have you ever actually seen a turnip truck?
Not in real life.
I have.
Have you? You have.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, so it is a thing.
You can vouch for me then.
Yeah.
They are real. People fall off of them all the time.
I mean, I guess
my dad has driven one.
People buy turnips. They got to come from somewhere,
That's
right?
right. And they usually
they grow
them
in the
with
truck.
Trucks.
That's where they come from. Yeah, they come from the truck.
A whole garden of turnips going in this truck.
It's
a truck made of turnips.
It's like in Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke. The whole truck is made out of turnips.
Yeah, that's it. It's just a steering wheel turnip, rims turnips.
Okay.
And Cheech and Chong is not your homework.
No, I figured, yeah. Okay, well, next on Turnipnado, we have an article from Phoronix. It says Microsoft continues building out its Linux distribution with more packages. So this is yet another thing that, personally, like firsthand experience, I don't have a ton with this, but I know that you guys both are pretty, or at least more experienced with Linux than I am. So a lot of new packages listed in this article and some other updates. What does this all mean for Linux users?
Well, we haven't talked about Microsoft's build of Linux in a little while, so I thought it'd be neat to do a little update. They switched from version 1.0 to version 2.0 a while back. I think that's the last time we reported on it, and Microsoft has continued to build on that. They had a secondary version of Linux, which they consolidated, so it's all in one now, so it's all in this CBL Mariner. And they've continued to add more packages, making it more and more useful. What I thought was interesting, I mean, there's packages in the list that are things people care about. Apache Commons has been added in. They added in where is it? RabbitMQ. RabbitMQ, the message queuing server, which is very popular in the microservices world. They added in some WireGuard support for VPN. So that's all like server side stuff. But they actually added a few tools for admins. They took tools like ATOP and HTOP, which are great performance monitoring tools. If you're not familiar with them, HTOP gives you a quick point-in-time view of the performance of your system, and ATOP allows you to do trending over time, so you can see like CPU utilization, memory, and so on.
Is it? Are you the kind of person that calls HTOP pretty top?
Yeah, I don't like HTOP.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's resource heavy.
Oh, I'm sure. I hardly ever use it. Everything's got a stinking graphical thing nowadays. So.
If you're in a test or dev environment, HTOP's great. It looks pretty, right? But on a production server, if you run HTOP, it has a measurable effect on the performance of the server.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that's a fact.
That's a fact, Jack.
Yep. So, I don't like tools that I can't run in production.
Ah. And yet, Titus still works here. Oh, Badoom too. I had to do it, Titus. I'm sorry. It was right there. I'm sorry, bro. You can forgive me.
We have to be careful for our listeners and viewers who don't know. Titus is actually the man behind the camera who makes all of this work, and without him, everything falls apart.
I feel like I'm gonna have overlays over my face now, and my microphone's gonna go off and on, as it should. I mean, I deserve those kind of reprisals.
Yep. So, moral of the story, though, is Microsoft is continuing to invest in this, and while they haven't come right out and said, "Look, we have our own Linux," it's a fully published thing. The GitHub repos are there. You can download ISO images. Their update servers are public. You can deploy this out in the real world, and it's a viable server operating system, not desktop. Like I don't think they support a GUI, at least not natively yet. So, but as far as a server OS, though, it's a very consistent, stable platform maintained by Microsoft.
Is this kind of like their response to what, like the Amazon Linux AMI or whatever? Is that the kind of idea they got behind this? Or?
Yeah, that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But also, people are trying to do containerized development more, and Windows sucks in a container. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's crap in a container. They have the whole Windows container subsystem and stuff, and it's just not even worth working with. So they had to do something to compete in that space, and this was their answer.
And it was called Linux.
Yeah?
Yeah. How about that?
Okay. I'm so glad that, because this is not it's not an operating system I really work with, so I'm glad you guys both have background knowledge in that, because it helps me to kind of learn. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
We're going to change that.
We're going to, I hope that I do learn more. Without using it every day, I think it's a little harder to learn about us. Maybe I should just switch to Linux now.
This is where, all right.
I see why you couldn't. If you threw Linux Mint on, you would probably be just fine.
Okay.
I don't know, Daniel. I love Linux.
Yeah.
Right. I've been working with it since I think the first time I installed it was 1994 or 1995. Like, I mean, I've worked with Linux a long, long time, and I don't run Linux on my desktop.
He doesn't.
And on a server, I think I'm at 100% right now. I don't think I have any Windows servers.
Well, it's for
anymore.
her. It would be more for like, because she's going down the security road. There is no not knowing Linux, right? I use Linux a lot because I need Linux a lot. All the tools I run in Linux. Everything I do is inside of some sort of Linux. And if she's going to go down that road, she got to learn that stuff. And it would be a cool experiment because it would be a nice, not a great control of whether or not someone who is not Linux savvy could jump into one of these more friendly Linux operating systems.
Yeah.
And to see how well she adapts to that and how quickly that goes, that would be an interesting kind of like experiment.
I guess the thing for me is, like, I run Windows on my main laptop, but I've got WSL. And so I can, I've got my little terminal icon.
Where does it go?
And I'm into
PowerShell.
Actually, it went to PowerShell, didn't it? Damn.
Don's marked out now.
I know. I just shot myself in the foot.
Yeah.
But, you drop right into it and you go into Ubuntu Linux.
Yeah.
And so, if I need a Linux command line, which I go into pretty often, it's there.
Yeah.
I don't see a whole lot of value in GNOME and the GUI ecosystem in Linux, aside from getting you to a web browser.
I won't argue with you on that.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, it could be a fun exercise.
Yeah, there's some pretty friendly Linux systems
I love
out
being
there,
an
like
office guinea pig.
Zorin or
It's great.
Elementary or whatever.
You can write your hypothesis, create a materials list for me, do a full scientific method thing, and we'll figure out if
subject is sweating. I see a furrowed brow.
Openly
Why
sobbing.
does she have arch link? Hold on, stop this thing.
You had to do a control group and a
Yeah.
placebo,
Right,
so,
right.
so one day you give her a
Double
laptop
blind
and
study.
and it's running Windows, and you just say, we made this Linux look like Windows, and
Yeah, that would be funny. She's like, I'm a Linux user now.
I have a whole list of stuff. Like you got to build a PC, you got to start running Linux. I'm gonna have a list of assignments. to do.
times.
Just,
Homework.
It's like I never left school. It's great.
Right.
So it looks like
To the job.
it looks like there's more details on this update on GitHub. So if you want to know more, you can always check that out. But for now, move on to what we've got next on our list. This article comes from Slashdot. This is some tech news going on in the world of the cloud. It says Samsung is considering replacing Google with Bing as the default search engine. And it sounds like a big reason why Bing's becoming a more attractive option is because of the artificial intelligence stuff, right? So do you think this threat from Samsung is legit? Like they might actually make this switch?
Yes, absolutely. And this is a big deal, right? 5 years ago, Google was like the king of the empire, right? This massive, toppable. How do you say that? You can't topple them.
Unbeatable?
Yeah.
What is the word there? I know English.
Top
Yeah, yeah.
Unable to be toppled.
Yes.
Yeah, unable to be toppled is what I'm going for here. But basically, the 800-pound gorilla that could not be beat in the search space, like they dominated the industry. And when OpenAI released ChatGPT and Microsoft got in early and invested $3 billion or however much into them and started incorporating it into Bing, Google went into panic mode. And we are right now witnessing one of those pivotal moments in technology where an industry giant starts to teeter on that edge of obsolescence. I've seen this a few times in my career, and it's been really interesting to see it. One of the first ones I saw was Novell, right? Novell NetWare.
They were huge.
There was a time where everybody had NetWare servers. And today, most people have never even heard of Novell NetWare.
Like Sophia.
And
Nor should she have.
And when I say
I'm lost.
everybody had these servers, I mean literally.
It's still around, though. It's still kind of popular out in...
It's just a brand name that gets acquired by different companies. Yeah, technically, I think SUSE Linux owns the NetWare brand name right now.
Gotcha.
But it's moved around so much, and it's got no value or marketing recognition anymore, except for old people like me.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I ran those Novell NetWare. They had a directory service. It was amazing.
It's the way it was, and we liked it.
That's right.
We saw it with BlackBerry, where they brought us email on our phone.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. Like pre-text message, that was amazing. Completely toppled. And they're just a brand name that gets handed off. I think it's like some European firm owns the BlackBerry name now. But yeah, there's one of those that buys up.
I remember when iPhones came out, they were labeled as the BlackBerry killer, right? BlackBerry killer. BlackBerry, and it was like, pfft, there's no stinking way anything's taking BlackBerry down. That was wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here we are. Fast forward to today. Google, peak of their game, dominating the industry, hates their customer, right? Like Google, if you are a Google customer in any form, and I mean you pay them money, they don't talk to you. Like you can't find a phone number. If you do talk to them, it's immediate blow-offs. Hey, have you rebooted your computer?
Yeah.
And have you read this document? And just terrible customer service. They make their money on ad revenue from search engines. That's where they get the bulk of their revenue. And now Bing rolls out something and changes the way people look at search, right? So when you do a search, Google gives you the top 10 results and page after page after page of results, but most people don't care about that. Most people never leave that first page of results. They just want an answer to a question, and that's what Microsoft has been baking in. Samsung currently, Google pays Samsung $3 billion a year to be the default search engine. And if Samsung jumps ship to Microsoft, that's
$3 billion.
Now, Google wouldn't pay Samsung $3 billion if they weren't making at least 3 times that on the ad revenue, right? So that's really $9 billion off of their bottom line. Now, Google also pays Apple $20 billion a year to be the default search engine on iPhones.
$20 billion?
$20 billion
So if they see, Samsung jump ship, and people are happy with that, then it's a good possibility.
Now, I should throw a grain of salt in here, which Samsung is also the company that brought you the Bixby audio.
Amazingly bad.
I think the only worst one is Siri.
I love the confused look on Sophia's face. She's like, "The
Just
hell's
smile
a
and
Bixby?"
nod. Yeah.
See, it's a Bill Bixby, right? And he it gets angry and turns into a big giant green rage monster.
Now, you use an iPhone, right?
I do.
Do you use Siri at all?
Occasionally.
I'm setting off everybody who's out there.
Yeah.
Hey, Siri. So what do you think of Siri?
Mostly I use it for I'll ask her to Shazam songs sometimes. Mostly I get irritated with her because she goes off when I don't want her to. And I'm like, shut up, I wasn't talking to you. But
And when you do want to talk to her, her hit rate's pretty low.
Yeah.
So pretty annoying. Samsung somehow managed to make one even worse than that called Bixby.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was only on Android phones, not on iOS. So,
It's funny.
I mean, with a name like
I have
Bixby.
an older phone. I have a Bixby button. It's dedicated.
that they won't let you remap.
You can't remap it. Or at least not. I haven't looked into it for a while, but back when this came out, it was like, there is no remapping that button. It is Bixby, damn you. And if I click it, Bixby's going to come up. It's going to go, what would you like to do with Bixby stuff? And I'm like, nothing. It was an accident when I was trying to put the phone in my pocket.
Yeah. So Samsung doesn't always make good choices. So we don't know what's going to happen here, but it's starting to really look like, especially with Google's Bard AI that they released, which is like the Bixby of
Oh, yeah. Google's Bard. What a name, right? Bard. Right?
Bard, yeah.
I'm thinking what are we playing? Dungeons and Dragons over here? I'm picking my character. I'm a bard. I'm going to be a bard. I'm going to play songs.
Yeah, they could have named it anything.
Yeah.
Coulda-
You go with Bard.
Bard. Does it sing to you? Like, how did they even get to that point?
Right.
You'd be hard pressed to do worse.
Poor marketing group was this.
You know they spent millions on focus groups.
Millions.
Yeah.
And they ended up with Bard.
Well,
Which is somehow worse than the name Bixby.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I think Bixby and I think Bill Bixby, who is a beloved character, right? An actor. He was a great actor that we all loved growing up. And now,
I'm sure he was.
they
No idea who it was.
I'll take your word for
It was a
sullied
live action The Incredible Hulk TV show.
Okay.
And
Large
he
giant
was
rage
he was,
monster.
Enormous Green Rage Monster gave that away.
he was David Banner.
Yeah.
David Banner?
Bruce.
Banner.
So
Bruce Banner.
he was David Bruce Banner.
Oh.
Was his name in the show.
Interesting.
And he went by David in the show. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only Bruce Banner I know is Mark Ruffalo, which is probably a crime to say on this podcast. But you know,
Well, there's plenty of them. Eric Bana played him.
I'm
as
sure.
well
I
as,
believe you.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry.
What's his name?
Nicolas Cage.
No. That was a good guess, though. He was, Ed Norton.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Norton
was in the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently he's a nightmare to work with.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Who's Ed Norton?
I am fully aware of what you're talking about.
The point I'm trying to get across, which is easy to have lost track of
Siri
at this point,
sucks.
is that we are in the midst of witnessing a tech shakeup. If you've ever heard these stories about NetWare and BlackBerry and so on and wondered, am I going to see something like that in my lifetime? You're in it right now. Yeah. And Google, we'll see how they pull through it, but a lot of companies don't have a great track record of pulling through this stuff.
Well, let me ask you, Don, if that, the toilet flushes on Google tomorrow, are you sad about it? Or how do you feel about that?
So I've actually slowly been de-Googling myself over the last 5 years.
Yeah?
I do still have some email accounts that run through them, but that's it. I don't have any dependencies on Google.
You use Google search engine or you use something else?
It is my default search engine.
Okay.
But I could switch to Bing.
Yeah, I actually have been using Bing a little bit more lately, and it is pretty good at what it does.
Yeah.
Well, I can't complain.
Yeah. The reason I don't use Bing, and this may not be a valid reason, but they're always pushing rewards programs and shopping crap.
No,
I just feel dirty.
You know what, though? I'd rather them try to entice me into paying them something and having a free service versus me being the product.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd rather that just old-fashioned exchange of, here is money for a service and thank you very much, not these weird, I don't really know what's going on and how you're using or what you're collecting and where that's going and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And you're taking that money and doing all sorts of God knows what with it. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is free, but it doesn't feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you say, that to me makes me feel a little dirtier than, hey, would you like to sign up for this program.
Yeah, I think part of it for me is just muscle memory. I've been using Google for so long for search engine, but their search results do tend to be better, right?
They do.
Their AI engine, different story, right?
Yeah.
But their generative text, whatever. But the search results for traditional search is generally better on Google. If I switched to Bing, it wouldn't slow me down.
How awesome would it be if the AI that they incorporate into the Bing search just Google searches it and brings you back the results?
Wasn't that what DuckDuckGo was doing?
Was it?
Weren't they, or was it Brave's search engine? Somebody had a search engine where it was
Brave
just
search
pulling
isn't
Google
doing it,
ones.
Yeah. But
And,
so Google doesn't like you doing that, though.
Yeah, it violates their terms of service.
Yeah, I do it all the time. I wrote a script that bypasses all that crap and just gives me links,
Yeah.
right? And then I
that's
can
what you
click the link and it opens up my Firefox browser or my Chrome or whatever I got. And bye. Thanks, Google.
Okay.
They hate me. I am not the
I'm
ideal
sure they
user.
do. I'm sure you are on their
Yeah.
crap list. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look, I got to be careful about what I say. So I don't want to say something that I'm gonna regret. So I think
There's some fun in that.
we can
Where's your sense of adventure?
look. Give me a few weeks. Give me a few more weeks of this. So I think that's going to wrap up our tech news segment of the show. But of course, we do have some security news coming up, including some news for you major league gamers out there that you might want to be aware of. So don't go away. Stay tuned for more Technado. Tired of trying to schedule your team's time around in-person learning? Isn't it a bummer to spend thousands of dollars on travel for professional development? What if we said you can save money and time and still provide your team with the best training possible? The answer to your woes is live online training from ACI Learning. With live online training, we provide our top in-person courses in private, online, instructor-led formats. You get to provide professional development in a manner that fits today's expectations. Entertaining, convenient, and effective. Our exam-aligned courses inspire the full potential of your team. Visit virtual instructor-led training at ACI Learning for more info. Welcome back for more Technado. We're going to go ahead and get into some of our more security-focused news in this half of the show. And we're kicking it off with stuff that I didn't realize that this was news. When I was reading it, I was like, has this not always been a thing? Seriously, I was like, is this new? This article comes from SC Media. It says LinkedIn deploys new secure identity verification for all members. And the thing that I didn't realize was necessarily new was one of the options that's listed in this article is that you can verify your work status, the company you work for, by providing your work email. And LinkedIn's been asking me to do that for months. So I was like, why? I was like, I don't want to do that. But like, I didn't realize that was new, or that it was being treated as new. I guess I didn't realize that was news.
No, you're right. That's been around a while. That's not new.
Okay, so it's just the clear thing that's new. So
Correct.
It says you can use this identity verification thing where you provide a government issued ID and a phone number, and boom, you're verified. Personally, don't know that that's worth it for me, but I mean, it's an option.
All right. So, it's easy to forget sometimes that LinkedIn is social media. And Daniel, you'll probably be the first person to say this. When I'm looking at social media content, how much of it can I trust?
On traditional social media platforms, which LinkedIn barely qualifies as, is not much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn's a little bit better because people on LinkedIn are typically trying to get a job. And so...
So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Yeah?
Like a lot. And LinkedIn, at least for me in my experience, it is not a bunch of, hey, look at the political faction thing that I'm,
So Twitter.
Not Twitter. It's definitely not like Twitter. It's more like, hey, here's a cool tool. Hey, here's a CVE that I just got. Oh, here's some new, breach that occurred, because the people that I follow and the groups that I follow, they're all security minded or focused. So therefore, that's all I see. And that's not a bunch of, fake news or, my grandma trying to get me to, did you see what they're doing now? And it's like, no, because I'm not looking at that. My LinkedIn feed is, I would say, close to 100% legit.
So with LinkedIn, you have a certain degree of legitimacy, but when you go to Twitter, you don't.
No.
Right? So Twitter, I think everybody knows about
legit garbage.
The blue check mark, right? So they started taking accounts and verifying them. If you were Matthew McConaughey, you got a blue check mark. Not quite sure why that's the first person that popped to mind, but a celebrity, a reporter. I mean, all right.
That's right.
So if you were a celebrity, a reporter, a politician, they would verify that the account actually belonged to you. And they never exactly said how they did that, but you were supposed to talk to them and verify your identity and so on. And then you get the blue check mark. And so if you saw tweets from somebody with that check mark, you knew that was actually from that person. You didn't know if what they were saying was true or not. That's a whole different story. But at least you knew it was them. Well, then it changed. Now it's if you have $8, you get a blue check mark, right?
Wasn't there like a lot of like fake blue check mark accounts?
Probably.
Wasn't that a problem?
How do you verify that stuff?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like you said, it was kind of like a black box of how to get verified. And
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because I knew there was a lot of people that weren't like celebrity status that had blue check marks. So
Yeah, and certainly more reporters than other areas. But what LinkedIn did is they said, look, we've got to have a way where people can prove they are who they say they are and to prove their work experience even. And so a while back, they rolled out a program, and I don't know when it was, Sophie, you mentioned a few months ago at least, where if you verified your work email address, then they would show you as verified, because if you put in your work experience, like I could put in my work experience, I worked at Microsoft. But how do they know I worked at Microsoft? They don't.
that's a good question.
Right? But if I have a, Don Pizzette at Microsoft.com email address, odds are I work at Microsoft. And so they have certain domains that they've verified as belonging to a company. And then if you can verify you own the email address, which they just email you a code, you punch in the code, and then you're verified. But what if you don't work for a company that is like that? So they need an extra step, right? How can we verify people are who they say they are? And so they teamed up with an unusual choice, a company called Clear. And are you guys familiar with Clear?
Not outside of this.
So I wasn't when I read the article, and then I talked to you, and you were like, "Oh, it's the thing we did when we got TSA bypassed."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh yeah." So yes, I am. I just didn't realize it was called Clear.
So for those of you who don't know about it, Clear started as a company at several U.S. airports. I think they were U.S. only.
So this is not a government entity, though.
Oh, no. Clear
Okay.
is a privately
private organization?
owned,
Okay.
for-profit organization. And they came up with a system that I didn't feel comfortable using. So I used it for a year, and then I just went and got TSA pre-check, and I didn't use it anymore. And I did global entry because it worked internationally. Clear was just in the U.S. and just at certain airports. So at certain airports, if you go and check in and you walk up towards the security booths, you'll see a line with the Clear logo, this weird sphere thing. And what their gig is, you pay them a couple of $100 a year, and they will take a fingerprint scan and a retinal scan of you and a scan of your driver's license. They put that on file. And so they know who you are, right? They've got your biometrics, they've got your driver's license, and then they'll let you skip to the front of the security line. And so you still have to go through security. You still have to go through the scanners and take off your shoes and all that stuff, but you skip the line, right? Now, what made me feel really bad, I'll give you the story on why I felt bad about this, is one day I was with a couple of other friends who also had Clear, and so they're walking us to the front of the line in front of like people in wheelchairs.
Yeah, pregnant ladies.
And I didn't feel okay with that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Hold on, ma'am. Stand back.
yeah.
Where do you think you're going? Sorry, sir. Please, right this way.
So I was like, I'm not using this service anymore. So I stopped using it. But also when I signed up, they were having problems with their retinal scan. And so they scanned my fingerprints and my driver's license, but no retinal scan. So they had like less biometrics on me. And yet I was getting this trusted status, which didn't feel right. And so I didn't like it. But that service, they haven't been doing all that great, especially with the pandemic. Clear revenue dropped out the bottom.
Yeah, because you couldn't go anywhere.
But it looks like they found a new revenue stream, which is, hey, if you want verified status on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is teamed up with Clear. You have to provide them a copy of your government ID. So you have to send them a scan of your driver's license somehow. And then they look at it and verify. A human actually looks at it and verifies that you are who you say you are, and you get verified status on LinkedIn.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad it's not a government entity, though, because I was sitting here thinking, man, now they got control over whether or not you can get a job and whether or not you can fly.
No kidding.
Yeah, my social credit score goes down to undesirable. Next thing I know.
well, how do you feel about giving a copy of your driver's license to a private entity?
So I did it here. Right, when I got
Your
hired,
employer,
right?
yeah, your employer, you have
give
to.
it to you, and it's a little concerning. It's like, why do we need that? Like, what is the purpose of having that information in the like company records?
Yeah, I think for something like this is just me. Maybe it's my paranoia talking, but For me, it would not be worth it for me to willingly give up. Like, here's my government issued photo ID. Here's my personal phone number to this private entity or whatever, just to be like, yes, that's really me on LinkedIn. For me personally, I'm not a big figure or anything. It's not. You just have to trust that that's me and that I'm real and that I'm not lying.
Well, plus there's a bunch of other factors about LinkedIn that kind of like, do you have 14 followers or do you have 14,000 followers?
For this specific job, if people were questioning, like, does she really work at ICI Learning? Go to the website. My picture's there.
Right, you're right
so
there.
It's
There's
not,
other ways to verify you.
Yeah, exactly. For this particular job. For other jobs,
you
it would
can
be
create
different,
sock puppet accounts or whatever that would mimic you. It's possible to make that happen. So that's the whole purpose of the verification process, right? It's like, well, I know that this Sophia Goodwin account is the real Sophia Goodwin accounts,
right?
But like, yeah, I'm not hucking over all my like PII to some rando for hundreds of dollars a year, to make that happen. It's not going to occur.
Now, I don't think LinkedIn is charging for this.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, but doesn't Clear charge for it?
Well, no. So Clear is partnered with LinkedIn. You just interact with LinkedIn.
Okay.
You don't interact with Clear to hand that information over, and you don't get to skip to the front of the line at the airport either. That's what you got to pay the money for.
Damn you.
Now, what I have to wonder, and I'll throw this out to you guys as a question because I know I've said this before, is that the internet would be a better place if we didn't have anonymity. And that's a bit of a controversial statement, right?
Yeah, it's pros and cons, right? It's not just one side or the other. There's pros to anonymity and there's cons to anonymity, and you got to learn, like, you got to figure out what is the better scenario, right?
I feel like on a personal level, it's for me personally, I would hate for them to be like, you no longer have that option to, like, it just sets off alarm bells to not even have the option to be it. But in general, like, for the greater good of the internet, I guess you could argue that, to have no anonymity would be great because you can verify that people are who they say they are and people aren't lying to you or whatever.
Right.
But
I could do that in real life, and you can't. I could give you fake credentials.
You could just lie.
Yeah, people have been doing it forever.
You think people would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
That's weird.
Let's assume for a moment
Yeah.
that a system like what Clear and LinkedIn are doing is developed that effectively identifies people, right? So in order to, maybe there's a government mandate that says you have to be Clear verified before you can use the internet. Services like 4chan would just go away overnight, right? Like that would not be able to exist if people had to put their real name on things. Sites like that would not exist, right?
Like I said, pros and cons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we know, the governments never use like your personal information against you in any way, shape, or form.
Whistleblowing would be like a whole different thing.
Right. So and that's why they have protections against, like, for whistleblowers. It's like because people don't like it when you start getting them in trouble for doing things that they've done. So like I said, pros and cons. There's pros and cons to going one way extreme or the other. Typically, we have sided on the fact that, it's better that, 10 guilty men go free than one get put in jail.
The one innocent,
Right.
Yeah.
So this is presumed innocence, and there's a level of anonymity that people get to enjoy.
Yeah.
And you've said before that there are no privacy laws. There are privacy laws, right? That are even federal privacy laws, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it's codified in the Constitution or not.
I mean, your right to privacy is the Fourth Amendment.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. Yeah. Oh, search and seizure, right? Yeah. It's a legal search and seizure is the Fourth Amendment, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. So there you go. You have to have due process. You got to have, all this stuff. So it's a political debate. It's a political argument on whether or not you should be made to say I am me when I say something. I mean, look at Ben Franklin, right? He published the Silence Dogood letters. Because if he didn't do that way, he would have been persecuted.
Yeah.
Right?
So I've kind of been speaking on both sides of the fence on this one.
Yeah.
And I do want to make clear my stance on this. I do not approve of a commercial entity being used to verify my identity.
Yeah.
So I will absolutely not participate in this program.
No.
Unless my employer forces me to.
Unless I get to cut to the front of the line at the airport.
You got to make another decision,
then
right?
we'll think about it.
Hey, if somebody out there sees my LinkedIn profile and isn't sure if it's me or not, then they should call me.
Right.
And if they don't have my number, then I don't want to talk to them anyway.
Yeah. So are you like me? So if I see a number that I do not know, I do not answer it.
I go a little further, and this is going to sound bad.
Yeah.
I'll regret saying this later, but I don't answer my phone ever.
Oh,
ever.
there you go.
Because
don't
if
care
it's
who's-
important, they'll leave a voicemail or
Right.
something.
If it's my wife or my mom, I answer.
Yeah.
Anybody else, it goes to voicemail,
Just a
and
voicemail.
I'll call them back.
Yeah.
My kids can wait. They don't. I'm not picking up the phone
My
for
kids
my
don't
kids.
have phones. Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no,
there you
neither do I. So my oldest daughter is asking, when do I get a phone? I'm like, not for a while.
What do you need one for? I'm with you all the time.
Absolutely. I said, if you need to use a phone, I got one right here. I'll let you use it.
Yeah,
While
you
I
can
watch
borrow
you.
it.
Yep.
My oldest son is 14.
Yeah.
All of his friends have phones. He doesn't want one.
Good for him.
I know. I'm so proud of him.
You have done well, sir. That's parenting win right there.
He does not want a phone. Yeah.
Nor should he.
Yeah.
God forbid he ever crossed that. He should reluctantly go, well, I need one for work or whatever.
Right. It's like, well, I have to have one.
Right.
Or it's basically a necessity at this
Yeah,
point.
right.
Yeah. Because for most people, I feel like in the working world and stuff, if you don't have a cell
Right.
phone, people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So-
People are always like, I sent you text after text. I'm like, yeah, I don't look at my phone.
Yeah.
My phone does not like hold my attention like it does most other people.
Daniel has a backlog of 3 weeks of Teams messages from me that he just doesn't look at. If it's important enough, I'll bring it up in person.
So 2 words, babe. Plausible deniability.
Well, I'm sure we could probably debate privacy laws and stuff like that all day long, but in the interest of time, we won't do that. We'll go ahead and move on. We've got our next article here, and actually this is part of a beloved segment called Who Got Pwned?
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
So this article comes from Naked Security. It says, attention gamers. Now that we have your attention. Motherboard maker MSI admits to breach issues. So if you're a gamer or just a squeezer of raw computing power, as the article puts it, that is the direct quote. You might have tried out hacks, so to speak, to let you change inaccessible settings and stuff, among other things. But if you're a fan of MSI motherboards, it sounds like you should be extra cautious right now about installing off-market firmware. Probably all the time you should be cautious about that, but right now especially.
Yeah, we hear about these breaches from time to time, and we've talked about breaches where a private key gets compromised. Well, in this case, MSI has had a breach. The attackers have had a large amount of access. Basically, they've grabbed whatever they want. They've pulled terabytes of data off of MSI's networks. And as a part of that, the attackers have been threatening MSI. They're trying to extort them for, I forget how much money, but a lot. And they've basically indicated, look, we got your tools for how to build a BIOS file, and we got your private key so we can digitally sign it. In other words, they can release custom firmware for MSI motherboards that's digitally signed that appears to be trustworthy. And the reason that Sophie's mentioning gamers specifically is people who do overclocking or try to push their board beyond the limits, your BIOS usually has protections in it that stop you from doing that. So it's pretty common for the hardcore overclockers to use custom firmware to get past that. Well, if you download firmware from an untrusted location, it could potentially be compromised and you wouldn't know it. Now, I would say at this point, MSI's own website is an untrusted location, but this is another example of where digital signatures are only one piece of a security posture, and it can get compromised like anything else, and it looks like that has indeed happened. So if you use MSI equipment, and the article, like the Sophos guys, they're great, but they're specifically referring to motherboards. But honestly, MSI, they make laptops, they make video cards, they make all sorts of stuff. If you have MSI hardware, I would certainly not
Start looking at
update.
Asus.
Not necessarily, but certainly not apply any updates for a little while.
Yeah.
Like, because you just can't trust the updates, even the ones coming from MSI.
Yeah, right,
aren't
because like
trustworthy.
how long have these attackers been in their system, right? How
Correct.
long have they had the ability to modify code? If you know, then you'll know which one to go back to, right? And maybe they've even like poisoned the well of the archives. Who knows?
I've complained before that there's a lot of drivers that you'll get with Windows updates, and sometimes there's a conflict from the driver from the vendor's website and the driver from Microsoft. But hey, the driver from Microsoft has been through an extra layer of security screening, so maybe that's the way you go on it. But it just goes to show that when you have hardware like this, there's a lot of trust we place in the vendors to protect it. But the vendors are a bit behind the eight ball because they're constantly having to defend against these attacks. Hardware companies like these don't do the greatest with software, and that's what we're seeing right here.
It's crazy that we keep seeing attackers not necessarily going after PII too much anymore, but going after source code. They want access to their repositories, want access to their keys, so that they can create this, what could potentially end up being some type of supply chain attack. Ultimately, like if everybody's using MSI, well, everybody that's using MSI is now under the rubric of compromised, right? So it's just interesting to kind of see that shift away from ransomwaring kind of stuff. We don't even see a lot of ransomware as much as we did before. We're just saying, hey, I got your files and I'm going to release them to the public if you don't give me some money, right? Or I've got that supply chain thing going on because I had access to your code repository and now I can create my own firmware. It's digitally signed. Everything is legit. You cannot tell. I can't believe it's not firmware is what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
And that's a scary proposition. And yeah, it sucks to get ransomware. But everybody's kind of moved into the, okay, well, I kind of know what to do. I'm keeping good backups. I keep that off site, everything. We've triaged that pretty well nowadays. So the attackers are going, well, let's see how this stirs your tea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On a side note, do they still make I Can't Believe It's Not Butter?
I have no idea. I eat real butter. I don't eat lab-grown butter, right? I eat real butter. Don's looking it up.
He's gonna. I think
Fabio is
I think it's still in stores.
hawking. I can't believe it's not
Is it
butter.
still real?
I think it.
I'm pretty sure it's still around.
Well,
yeah, I would say it is.
I think you need to trademark I Can't
Like, I
Believe
don't-
It's Not Firmware. And
The derivative work. It's fair use.
it apparently still exists.
Yes. With omega-3s. now.
Yeah, you got to have those omega-3 fatty acids. If you learn one thing on Technado today, it's
I can't believe it.
Butter.
Not butter has omega-3s.
Not butter.
Yeah.
Sorry. As far as this article goes, I mean, there's no major league gamers in this room, right?
No.
So probably, as far as this is not something that directly is going to affect me. It's good to know.
Yeah, the people that have these MSI motherboards, go home, play your games, enjoy the game,
yeah.
and leave your computer alone for 5 minutes and let
Yeah.
it just play games for you.
Yeah. Quit trying to squeeze every last drop
Yeah.
of power out
Yeah.
of it. Just
Yeah.
let it do its thing.
Do you need 120 FPS? I mean, honestly.
They have chosen in the article to focus on gamers, but really this would apply to anyone who
Right,
has
that's
MSI
MSI.
hardware. Maybe take a pause before doing that next firmware update until we get confirmation from them that everything is clear and a new round of updates comes out.
I'm sure that's forthwith.
Yeah.
That's coming real soon.
My brother's, my older brother, he's more familiar with specifically PC gaming and
Yeah.
just general PCs. He's I think he's built his own PC. And if you're watching, hi. So I'm sure I'll hear from him after this about this particular thing because this is something that would interest him. But for me, it's it's not something that I don't really mess with firmware a lot. It's not something that I get into.
MSI is a budget brand. So they're low cost hardware, and I believe they're Chinese. No, Taipei, Taiwan. That's a big difference right there. So so they're a Taiwanese company, but they are known for being low cost. And when you get low cost hardware, but the hardware is licensed from NVIDIA or somebody else, when it's low cost hardware, they got to save money somewhere else, and it's almost always software development. And so that's what we're seeing here. I don't think you'll see this in a lot of corporations. But home users, small businesses, people that go to Best Buy to buy their equipment, that's where you'll see people with MSI.
Okay. Interesting. That's good to know. So whether you're a gamer or not, it's good to know. Good information to have.
The more you know.
Yeah.
The more, I wish we had that graphic with the little rainbow. The more
Then we
you know.
get sued.
Yes,
And
we would.
Would we really?
A cease and desist at first.
Oh, yeah.
No, just mine.
You can get away with
No
it a
big
couple
deal.
of times. before.
What's a cease and desist
Right?
between friends? Right?
I mean, that's just the cost of doing business nowadays, right, Don?
We got a lot of legal talk going on in this episode.
Yeah.
So moving on, before we get into trouble, this next segment is we're going to, like you guys were doing earlier, take a little walk down memory lane for Deja News.
Deja News.
I forgot the voice was coming. Sorry. It took me by surprise. This article comes from TechCrunch. It says hackers claim vast access to Western Digital systems. So a couple weeks ago, April 3rd, I think, Western Digital did disclose a network security incident, but they didn't give a whole lot of details. It was like certain hackers obtained certain data from certain systems and certain death may be impending or whatever, something like that.
I think that's a great summary.
I think it is a great summary. Thank you. I worked really hard on that. But it sounds like now some more information about what exactly was obtained is coming to light, right?
Next week, we're going to announce how Sophie is the new PR director
Yeah,
for Western
for Western
Digital because
Digital,
you
yeah.
nailed it. You're exactly right, though, right? They were really light on the details. We're only now finding out more information about what happened. And basically, it's a worst-case scenario. So when Western Digital got hit, they shut down their cloud services. So that's what we reported on was, hey, if you had a Western Digital MyBook, your MyCloud service was totally offline. Couldn't get to it. People were locked out of their drives for a little while, but now they can get into them again. But the cloud service is still down. It's been down for weeks. And now we're finding out that the attackers got a lot. They transferred around 10 terabytes of data from Western Digital, which, I mean...
So they have Western Digital is what you're saying.
And look, they're not saying whether customer data is affected, but let's say you're a hard drive manufacturer. Western Digital is one of the largest hard drive manufacturers in the world, so they make hard drives. How much data do you think a company that manufactures hard drives would have? Not 10 terabytes.
Yeah. So what you're saying is if like the main place goes down, they could be a hot site replication for that. Right. Like, I could stand Western Digital right back up. Don't worry about it.
Just pay the hackers.
Yeah, just pay the hackers.
So the odds of there being customer data in this are pretty high, but they have revealed some of the information that they've pulled, and they've been making threats to Western Digital. They want a
Quite a bit of
ransom
money, if I'm not mistaken.
in excess of $10 million. They said 8 figures or more. Well, 8 figures is 10 million. So
a million per terabyte.
that's right. Maybe that's how they price it.
They're like, well, just you got 10 terabytes here.
It's like when you're at the grocery store and they weigh the vegetables. They weigh your data, and there you go.
Looks like you owe me $10 million there, buddy.
I'll double down on my statement from the last article about Western Digital as a hardware company. And so obviously not going to be great at software. And that's what we're seeing here with their cloud service being offline for so long. The attackers fully penetrated Western Digital. They got, I know, I love saying that. They got global admin privileges to Western Digital's Azure account, full access to all of their cloud infrastructure, and they got access to their SAP back office, so all of the financial and accounting. So I cannot see any limit to what they had access to, basically everything.
I love reading this article and how the hackers were just like, can we just stick our egos to the side here and give us our money and call it a day? Quit messing around.
Level with us.
Quit. Yeah. I mean, this is where we're at in life. You might as well go ahead and pay us and let's call this. It's almost like they're frustrated that they're still dealing with Western Digital.
Yeah.
It's like, can we make this deal happen and get on with our lives, please?
Yeah, we've got other people we've reached that we've got to contact.
You're chewing up resources here, buddy.
We're not here just for Western Digital.
Yeah, you think Seagate ain't on our list? Come on.
Good old Seagate. They were very generous in saying, yeah, just pay us and we'll make this whole thing go away. We'll keep it secret, which that cat's already out of the bag.
Yeah.
We'll show you the weaknesses on your network. Like, that's nice of them. Yeah. But the reality is
$10 million pen test.
When you pay these people, you don't know that they're going to deliver on anything they say because they literally are criminals. So Western Digital's in a bit of a pickle on this one. I can't see them paying this bounty. That's just
that would be a lot.
I shouldn't call it a bounty.
I'll tell you what though. The CISO, when they go asking for money next time for pen tests, they're going, so the last time we got pen tested, it cost us $10 million. This company's only asking $10,000. Which one would you rather pay?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should do this more often.
I think, wasn't there a bit in here about how they stole some recorded meetings?
Did they really?
One of the meetings, it was either Western Digital or MSI. I don't remember which one. Where they stole recorded meetings, and one of them, like the CISO, is in the meeting. So that's a little embarrassing.
I told you we should have spent that money on internet security stuff, but
that does bring up a good point, Daniel. There's always a backstory.
Yeah.
It could be that they have the world's most incompetent CISO.
That's true.
Right? And so their network is not secured and it's terrible. Or it could be that they have a really competent CISO who is trying their hardest to secure that network, but was being denied funds.
Yeah, he's getting double birds by the sea level.
That happens.
It does.
It happens. And even if you compromise, you just go like halfway. You got half the funds you requested. Yeah. Well, it's...
I can get half the things I wanted to get.
And the attackers only need one hole to get in. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. Well...
So this one's pretty bad, and it may actually turn out to be one of the biggest hacks that we have this year. I did find it interesting. The attackers said they didn't want to use ransomware because they wanted to give Western Digital a chance to get out of this. If you use ransomware,
Listen, we're not as bad as all that, right? Come on.
Yeah.
I didn't ransomware you. What do I look like, a douchebag?
That's a good point. I mean, that's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of their argument at this point. You think other hardware vendors are going, we should learn from this?
Yeah. I hope we get hacked by those guys.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna get hacked, I want those Western Digital hackers. I mean, there's
Help me
pretty
help
cool.
you. I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, we'll share a beer and give them $10 million.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying the thing you said about the meeting, the screen grab from it was TechCrunch. It says it was a screenshot of a group call where one of the participants is identified as their CISO. So it was this article about Western Digital. So
That's fun.
yikes.
Now, I almost said something a second ago about how this group doesn't even have a name.
Oh, do they?
They don't have a name, and that makes me a little suspect, right? Because
Okay.
these types of attacks are usually perpetrated by groups that have a name.
Yeah.
And it may be why am I drawing a blank
Like
now?
Lazarus Group or whatever.
Lulzsec.
Yeah.
What are all the bear ones from Russia?
Oh, yeah. Fancy Bear, Cozy Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they normally have a name like that, but here's this group. There's a couple of people apparently, and they don't have a name.
Yeah.
That's odd, and they even say that like we don't have any ego. We're doing this, and
Yeah. Lapsus is one, right?
and it's odd, and so they've teamed up with another group called Alpha V or Alpha 5. I don't know how you say it.
I haven't heard.
To get them to release the information. So the stuff that they've been disclosing has been going through this other group. That seems weird to me, and I can't help but think about that Ubiquity breach. Where, do you remember the hacker said, look, I got into Ubiquity, I got your private keys, I got everything, you need to pay me money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out to be the CISO.
Oh, really? I don't remember that one. No.
It's like a movie.
I just spoiled that. This
Yeah,
is like an
you
M. Night
sure did.
Shyamalan film. And I just ruined the ending. Like the people at Ubiquity, they see dead people.
Yeah. I'll be damned.
And Rosebud is a sled.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So this hacker was exploiting them and was saying, you need to pay me money or I'm going to disclose, I've got access to everything. And so internally, the staff, they do their incident response. So what do? They go to the CISO. So the CISO kicks off an investigation.
Oh, yeah. We got incident response, baby.
And so here you have the person doing the crime is the head of the investigation. So, of course, I don't know, this is a really sophisticated attack.
I don't know how they got in.
It's not in the logs at all because the dude had access to everything.
Wow.
And I forget how they caught him, but they did track it back. The FBI tracked it back to him. It was something about the communications he was sending that they were able to track him with.
He
that.
probably made some stupid mistake, like he accessed something from his house.
Forgot to
Got
turn on
cocky.
Tor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they got him, and that's going through the court system right now.
Nice.
But boy, talk about a bad situation. So they thought they got hacked. The hackers had information. They were disclosing. They were leaking little bits of it, but it turned out to be the CISO. Anytime I hear something like this and the group's like, yeah, we don't have a name. We don't have an ego. Why don't you just pay us the money so we can move along?
You start to ring
insider.
bells. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're teaching the insiders right now. They're taking notes going, okay, so try to blame it on someone else. I gotcha. You know?
Hey, make up a name.
Yeah.
How lazy is that?
Just look up, go to the MITRE attack framework, look up an ATP or APT group and see what their common attack vectors are. And you do that.
Yeah.
It's a stinking playbook on how this group does what.
Or
Follow the bouncing ball.
just use what was the 90s grunge band name generator? You ever see that? I got to look that up. Grunge band name generator. So in the 90s, Sophie,
There was this musical genre called
They had
grunge.
bands in the 90s?
They did.
and it was always
Crazy.
2 words. You had Pearl Jam, Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Sure.
Nirvana.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, that kind of breaks it, doesn't it?
So you know that there was this guy, he played guitar for Nirvana for years before they were famous, like in the late 80s. And then he went on to play for Soundgarden. And then once he quit that, he became a special forces operator and did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
What a life.
Yeah. So I can't seem to find a good. It's easier to generate a random password than it is to find a grunge band name generator. But point is that there's some things about this story to me that have my
Antenna up?
conspiracy flag up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we may find out more down the road. But at this point, just know that Western Digital's data is compromised, and
And therefore your data is compromised.
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Fun.
And I wouldn't download any Western Digital firmware for a while. Fact.
Oh, is that? that's
Sensing a
what-
pattern
okay,
here.
let me just-
Most
Yeah.
people never update the firmware on their hard
Check my
drives anyway,
email.
but you can.
Yeah, a lot of people. Don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So lesson learned. I'm sensing a pattern here in some of these articles. So I think
lesson.
that do what?
A lesson.
A lesson. Yeah.
This is
Sure.
a teaching podcast.
This is a.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. We're here to. The more you know.
Well, it goes back to show you, like, so we did IoT pen testing, right? And we talked a lot about firmware,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I showed you how you could get a copy of the firmware,
Yeah, you did
modify
the
the
whole firmware, mod kit
firmware,
stuff,
right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine if I had some sort of backdoor access into one of these IoT systems, and I was able to modify that firmware, and now I put it in the repository. And anybody that does do a download or an update to their firmware is now getting my nasty stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm just watching. I'm watching the beacons roll in,
Wow.
right?
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Yep.
Scary world we live in. It's so great. I love coming on the show and
Technado.
getting new fears. Yeah.
We
every
give you
week.
nightmares.
Yeah. Not monetizable by YouTube.
I think that's going to do it for our news. Real quick, I did want to mention Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. So if you're listening from the Technado website, you can look for the sponsored by button. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the IT Pro website. If you want a discount on your membership, you can use the code Technado30. And if you want to support us in our day jobs here, you can check out some of those courses. I think they're pretty cool. I'm not biased. You can also check out ACI Learning's webinars, and they're live on social events. There is an upcoming webinar. It should be the day this episode's released. That's Thursday, April 20th. It'll be at 2 p.m. They'll welcome Shannon Noonan, who is the CEO and founder of High Noon, and she's going to talk about cybersecurity governance with Hernan Murdoch. And then last thing, you want to stop by RSA if you're going to be in San Francisco, if you happen to be in that area. I'm not, but if you are. ACI Learning will have some representatives there next week, April 24th to the 27th at booth 2429. And edutainer Wes Bryan will be in attendance. And if you're looking to be starstruck, go see him. Stop by and say hello. And I think that's all that
Quiz him on acronyms. The man is the boy knows his acronyms like I've never seen anything like it.
So he'll
Like an
he'll do a
encyclopedia.
trick.
He's the
He'll- yeah.
anti-me, right? Whereas I can't remember an acronym to save my life.
He knows them all.
He knows them all.
He knows them all. He creates the acronym.
And not only that, and I'm talking like obscure crap that you shouldn't know, and he knows them.
I mean, somebody's got to know it.
I
You don't know it. Somebody has to.
Yeah.
That's all that I got. You guys got anything that I forgot, other than the acronym thing?
Yeah.
That's all you had to offer.
No,
I'll
you know,
see you
we're,
cooking anything up.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I think things have been heating up on the security front this year. So 2023 is turning out to be quite the active hacking season.
Yes.
So
Yes.
stay safe out
Sure,
there.
there's nothing that we'll have next week.
No,
Oh, absolutely.
no, it's gonna be a
Purely
boring show.
quiet.
Yeah, pretty. We might not even have a show next week. It's
Yeah,
just gonna be
yeah.
so quiet.
Nothing to talk about.
If you want to find out, you just have to tune in next week and see if Daniel and I match our shirts again.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of,
Sort of.
kind of
Kinda,
matches.
sorta.
It's
Military themed.
it's the thought that counts.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us for this episode of Technado, and we'll see you next week.